Shanti. Translation is okay? Yeah? Everything's going okay? No? Si. Da. Oui. Yes. It's interesting that this song was just played, and I remember when I wrote it, it was, have you ever participated in a service meeting where there is a lot of ego present? Have you ever seen that? And I was thinking about it, and when I got back to the room, I was in Pandab Bhavan, and I was with two other brothers in the room, and the lights had already gone out, and I was thinking about the meeting and how it could have been better if there was less ego. And the words of the song came to me in the dark, and I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, and I didn't want to disturb the other brothers. So I wrote the words without any light. And then the next day I put some music to it. But I think it's not just a song that is related to service. It's actually something that we should remember for our lives, because we are just instruments, and that's the whole idea, you know. You can't substitute God, basically. Even though we are little gods, Baba says master gods. But in fact, anything that we have which is beneficial, anything that we have to give to others, any understanding that we have, any virtues that we have, it may be that they are innate qualities of the soul, yes, but certainly it's through Baba's influence that those qualities are activated and we're able to move along and be with others and interact with others. This morning, Baba said that Ravan's world is a world of lies and Baba's world is a world of truth. And if we just slightly change that a little bit and put it, Ravan's world is a world of unreality and Baba's world is a real one, then most of us are still living in between those two worlds, partly unreal and partly real. What is real? What does it mean? For example, reality is a cycle that repeats every 5,000 years, identically. Reality is the fact that we are souls in bodies, interacting with other souls through their bodies. The souls are not the bodies, they're just using them. And the extent that someone influences things, that's probably what you'd call his world. Where does our world stop? What's the limit? Does it stop where my fingers stop or where my nose stops? This is the limits of my little world, or does it reach out and touch others or interconnect with other people's little worlds. That's probably right, isn't it? And I remember, in fact, it's helped me immensely in my Brahmin life. Many years ago, Sister Sudesh, who a long time ago was a student of philosophy, she mentioned that the word Maya actually comes from two Sanskrit roots, ma and ya, and it would mean not. Ma is not, and ya is that, not that. So in the philosophical terms, the that would be God, right? And everything which is not that is not God. So in a sense, Maya means not God. Everything that is not God. That's a pretty big and wide definition, isn't it? So often it seems, and especially going back to that meeting which I wrote about in this song, each of us acts as if we're in a little tunnel, right, of our own perception. And we get caught up in that tunnel with our own thoughts and our relationships and things that we have to do and our plans and our projects. And we carry that wherever we go. The tunnel continues wherever we go, right? But the real things are happening in and around that. And especially sometimes we're so much caught up in our own stuff that we forget, like Baba said this morning, there are so many wonders happening around us, right? There are so many wonderful things, we should be amazed. Baba will never see problems, difficulties, obstacles. He would just see a perfect drama. Everything is, moving around according to whatever has to be settled. And souls are eventually getting back to where they started in the beginning of the cycle. Each soul has a process, gets caught up in that process, then has to leave the process. And that's where we have our difficulties. There's a lot of wonderful things happening inside of ourselves too, and sometimes we forget them. Some of the transformations that all of us have gone through. Have you? Can you remember what it was like before Gyan? It's hard, isn't it? Even I remember I was only, 6 months in Gyan. When I thought back to how I had been before that, it was like thinking about someone else. It's like, that's not me, that's not me. And the biggest gift, the biggest wonder that Baba's given us is ourselves, our real selves. So which is the real me in amongst all of the things? And what are the real actions that I have to be doing? What are the real relationships that I have to have with others? What then is reality? How real am I in the way that I'm living my life, in the way that I'm interacting with others? How much free am I from the tunnel of my own perception? And it's very difficult. I think only when we go into a deeper state of meditation, then we really perceive that there is a difference. Otherwise, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and the emails to answer, and I've got to go talk to so-and-so, and then has to happen, and oh yes, I have to meditate too, and tomorrow I'm going to really, have a good stage, and so on, But it's like stepping between two completely different worlds, actually two completely different universes. And if we look at, for example, Dadi Gulzar, she's already on the other side, isn't she? And it must be peculiar to her, amusing, as Baba says. When I look at the games that you children play, I feel very much amused, right? Baba has been smiling at the games of the children. I remember once we were having a chit-chat with Baba, and he was saying that, what would it be? What would it look like if there was a tall, elegant gentleman walking along holding hands with Mickey Mouse? There has to be some sort of, at least size-wise, some sort of parity, that's probably the best word, that I and Baba are moving along together, and not a tall, elegant gentleman holding the hand of Mickey Mouse, yeah? And so, how much am I looking back from that real side and trying to understand the things that are not real? Or how much am I caught up in what's not real, grasping at what's real? Where am I? Maybe the who am I is always, we have to add on, where am I? What am I doing after all? Because if I don't get the first question right, who am I, the rest of the questions are not right anyway. What am I doing, for example, will never be right unless who am I is right. And so if we look at the process that we've been through over time, it's been a huge investment of ego, hasn't it? Ego has sought. Ego has invested in the search. Ego has invested in the relationships. Ego has invested in, and the relationships that we have now are still the interest of ego's investment, you could say. The same people practically. I really don't feel that we've had much variation in terms of the sorts of people who've been hanging around with every birth, right? It's pretty much the same bunch that's been sort of moving along with us, right? So I've been, maybe I don't know how many, but our intimate circles really have never been very many people. Maybe 5, 6, maybe 10. Mostly people, when they take rebirth, they haven't planted seeds in other places, so they'll take rebirth in the same place, probably. Unless we move around, we probably won't take rebirth in other places. And so you can imagine groups of souls sort of working out their stuff over many births, and you've got a pretty good idea of what the last half of the cycle looks like. Yeah? And so giving and taking, practically with the same group. And so the boss comes back as the father, the mother comes back as the son comes back as the cousin, the girlfriend comes back as the boyfriend. Right? So that's the reality. That is the reality. That we're with souls who are occupying bodies, moving those bodies around, sorting out stuff over a long period of time. Unreality is to forget that place all importance on what's happening now. Forget that you're a soul. Forget that the others are souls. Forget God also. And get so much caught up in the situation and the words and who said what and who did what and who went where, and make such a big deal out of things. Baba asked this morning, and it sort of struck me because I talked about this class, just about half an hour before the Muli, so I was, wanting to hear what Baba was going to say about this topic. But Baba made a question: what is important? What is really important? And if we can't see the reality that's happening and the wonders of the reality that's happening around us, and we get stuck in our little, checking the returns of the investment of our ego, then we get stopped by a situation, by a person. Sometimes you have a chronic maya, right? Have you ever had chronic maya? Something that lasts for, say, 6 months, maybe a year, sometimes 20 years. I've heard that sort of thing. 20 years ago you did this. You've been carrying it for so long. But then you have acute maya, where you lose your stage for 10 minutes or so. You forget who you are, and you forget who everyone else is, and you forget what value is, what real value is. And so we've all had acute maya, right? Have you lost your stage for 10 minutes? Yeah. Have you lost your stage for a month? Yeah? Anyway, what happened is that it's why it becomes difficult, and again, difficulty is an unreality, yeah? Difficulty is a wrong reading of a situation, because if Baba sees a situation, he says, everything is easy, Baba sees a situation and says, what's the problem, But the child is there engaging with the situation in such a way that is extracting sorrow from it. And you know what? It's the soul giving the sorrow to itself. It's not anyone else. It's not the situation. It's just that according to drama and according to karma, the soul has to extract X amount of sorrow from that particular situation. That's the real reading, let's say, if you wanted to bring things down to the most basic of all denominators, sorrow is something that the soul gives to itself, using others, by the way, And sometimes we look for people to use so that we can experience the amount of sorrow that we need to experience because our karma or our drama is such. So if you start to look at people from whom you suffer, let's say, anything, do you have anyone from whom you suffer particularly? Do you have a favorite difficult person? Yeah? Yeah? Do you have? Mostly everyone has someone, yeah? And mostly it's someone who's close to you. Probably one of your ex-husbands, ex-fathers or ex-wives or boyfriends or girlfriends or bosses or, colleagues from another birth, and here we are. We've been through a lot together, we've crossed paths how many times? How do we get a sense of family if we haven't crossed paths so many times? Yeah? We're part of the same tribe Actually, better word than tribe, I suppose, is clan. And Baba says the Brahmin clan. So this is our clan. And we recognize each other. You too, hey? We've been through everything since the beginning of the cycle. And here we are. We can recognize old veterans of many battles. Yeah? So here we are. And so I have to understand the people around me in their reality. Because who am I and who are they? Right? Who is this soul who I experience difficulty from, really? What is going on here? Why have I allowed this soul to be an obstacle for me? Why am I using this soul to experience sorrow? And so this wanting is the cause of suffering, basically. I only suffer from those from whom I want something. Maybe I want some acknowledgement, maybe I want some recognition, maybe I want some love or, something or the other. And so, since we're not able to work out everything directly, we have to sort of work it out indirectly, and that's where probably our health comes into it. It's like indirectly trying to work out things that we can't work out directly. Yeah? So instead of being able to put it out, I put it in and sort of mess up my metabolism. So the process has been a long one. If we go back to the golden and the silver ages, we didn't want anything from anyone. We didn't need anything from anyone. We didn't think about anyone else really, what they needed or what they didn't need. We didn't see ourselves as being important for others or seeing others as being important for us. We were just okay. We didn't think too much, didn't need to think too much, didn't have many words. If you go through a murli, even a murli, you won't find many words that will be there in the golden age. The other day I went through one, and the only word I could work out that would be in the golden age was the word and. And. There's no word for God. There's no word for virtues. There's no or, this or that, right? It's just this and that and that and that and that and that and that and everything. Can you see yourself in a world like that? Where there's absolutely no dependence on anyone or anything? Can you feel that that's part of you? Those sanskars are there. And the reason why we are attracted to here is because those sanskars are in us. And so there's a lot of wonder in ourselves. And I guess the only way to feel happy is to feel how wonderful you are internally. But the real you is coming up to the surface, and the unreal you is moving away. And Baba said the world of lies. Maybe we don't lie. Though I did see a survey the other day in which it said that people tell about 40 lies every day. Little ones, and maybe a few big ones in between. Men tend to lie more than women, by the way, in this survey. But internally, we may be also living lies, something that's not real. Why am I stopped? Because of such and such or so and so. Why can't I move on? What am I telling myself which is not real about that person or about myself? So I'm living a lie because I'm telling unreal things to myself. Why can't I have the wide view, see the panorama, see the soul in all of its births, maybe, see the other soul in all of its births, right? Sometimes, it's like in the old days, even in India, they used to put prisoners in holes in the ground. The British had a very good habit of doing that with prisoners. Like solitary confinement wasn't a cell, it was like a hole, and they just put the person in the hole for a few days or a few months. You imagine if you're living in a hole and you've only got this much of sky, right? Just this much of sky. A little bit of a cloud passing by now and then. You see the light and the dark. Maybe, if you're lucky, you see a bird. Very lucky. But basically it's just blue and black, right? And white. So imagine if you were living in that sort of situation and you're trying to imagine. You create an imaginary world of what could be outside of that. That's the sort of situation that Maya forces us into when we live out a life which is not real. Because when we're not real, we have to imagine, we have to interpret. We don't see it, we have to interpret, If something's hot, it's hot, right? Now, because we don't know, we have to imagine what hot would be. Imagine someone coming along and telling you how a strawberry tastes like. Very difficult to describe. But it's when we have a sense of reality that we get the experience. So there is Baba's versions of things, and then there is others' versions of things. That's why there's the difference between Sri Mat and all of the other mats. The Shastra Mat, which is the scriptures, the Guru Mat and the Man Mat and the Par Mat, the directions of others, the directions of our own minds. And then there's Sri Mat, which sort of shines out. So there's only one Sri Mat, and then there's all of the other things. So what's moving me ahead? Is it Baba? It's not just Baba's versions of things. I like this word. It's not a word that we use very much in English. It's sort of our own jargon when we say Baba's versions, right? You don't hear that outside of this context. And I don't know how it's translated into other languages anyway. But in English, certainly, we don't use this word versions in a popular way. But it's very interesting if you think about it. What's Baba's version of this situation? It means, how does he see it? Version means how it's seen. That's the word in English anyway. Maybe in Latin languages it works. I don't know if it works in Japanese or Russian. But it means how we see things. So how does Baba see this situation? How am I seeing the situation? How is everyone else seeing the situation? And let's compare. Let's compare. And of course Baba's version will always be the best one. Because he's completely detached, completely loving, completely independent in a sense. And he will always see things correctly. And he will never see a problem. Right? He will never see a difficulty. He will never see an obstacle. So if I start to see problems, difficulties and obstacles, I have to start thinking, what is the difference between my version of this situation and how Baba would see the same thing? And then compare. We often forget, for example, that Baba is the purifier. So nothing that I would do, no effort on my part, will purify me, because that work is Baba's work. Yeah? So I can do everything, but if I don't do this little bit, it's as if I haven't done anything. Someone asked the question this morning about inculcation. Do we really inculcate virtues? In fact, the Baba said in today's Muli, you have to inculcate divine virtues. I think the correct word there, the emphasis has to be placed on divine. Because we have virtues, but we have to get them divinized. So I would say inculcate means to divinize the things that are already there. You know, we've got a little bit. In fact, we've got everything that we need except the power to divinize them. This last program of Baba related to inner power and protection that we carried out in all around the world. Did you do a program in your place? Hand up. No. Come on. There was a program on inner power and protection in your place? Yeah. The majority. But it also gave us a chance to think about our own sense of power, and for that reason, the protection that we need, right? And my own churning, I was thinking that, yeah, it's really the only thing that we need. We've got everything else. The only thing that we lost from the beginning of the cycle till now was the spiritual power. And with the spiritual power, there is the purity. And Baba's job is to purify, and that means to put the spiritual power back into the soul, which it lost. Because spiritual power brings out everything else, like makes everything that's already there shine up. So if we look at inculcating in that sense, it becomes very real. It's very real. I don't need to, if I do everything, run around doing service, study 100 mulis in a month, read I don't know how many books, talk to I don't know how many souls, but if I don't do the power bit, the power part, I haven't done much really. So we should remember that Baba is the purifier. No amount of running around on my part will purify me. It's only that connection. And I'd like to share with you, like down below I shared too, but it's been very revealing for me, new. I'd like to say it's been new experience for me. I don't know where I saw it, and then later on I got it confirmed, but it is a way to look at it. The word bhava, that's in mana bhava means feel. It has a connotation of feeling. And I'm not an expert in Hindi, so please don't jump on me, those who speak Hindi. But I liked it for me. It worked for me. And man means mind, mana means mind. And so man mana bhava would be feel that you are mine through your mind. And we translate it, remember me alone. You know, it's very different. It's not just remembering, okay, I remember. But do I feel? Do I feel? So I feel that there are two ways of looking at it, actually. To feel that my mind belongs to Baba, and to feel that I'm making my mind his mind, in a sense, that I start to think the way that he thinks. At least I get close to that. We talk about closeness to Baba, but actually it's closeness in thinking also, isn't it? It's not just a romantic sort of, my beloved Baba, you are fantastic. And the rest of the day I'm thinking bad things about everyone else, right? Baba's so lovable and everyone else is terrible, you know. You can't have that sort of if you don't have a good relationship with one of Baba's children, that will affect your relationship with that child's father, who is mine as well. Imagine neighbours, right? You hate your neighbour's kids, but you want to have a good relationship with the neighbours. Won't work. So that's why it's good to do a reality check. How real am I being in the way that I see things? My version. Is it close to Baba's version? In the last, I guess, 12 months, I must have talked to so many BKs about so many things. I travel around a lot, visiting many countries in South America, and I can't say that I've done it all the time, but when I've done it, it brings a different light to the talk. Just by asking the question, okay, what are we talking about? Is it your version, or is it my version, or is it Baba's version? Or we can talk about my version and your version, but let's listen to Baba's version as well. How would he be seeing this? And it certainly makes the conversations shorter. When it's our versions, it's a Ramayana, right? When it's Baba's versions, it's a Bhagavad Gita, right? Little tiny essence. And then there's the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and sometimes those who are center coordinators, even country coordinators, some of the emails we get, my God, 5 pages. It's somebody sort of trying to work out their own tunnel, and this happened, and then that happened, and that person came and talked to me, and they said this, and what's the reality in all of that? Yeah? There's a lot to be, the symptoms. The symptoms of... Baba made a few questions today, like indicators of a good stage. Do I disturb others? Yeah? How do you know if you disturb others or not? Do you really know if you're disturbing others? You may think that you're fantastic and the sun is shining out of your mouth, right? But how do you know if you're really having a good impact on others, a positive impact on others? It means for us to be objective. And the only way you can be objective is get out of your own tunnel, in a sense, and see things in a wider dimension. Baba said, do I lie? Okay, leave aside the little white lies that we may tell to others. Yeah, I got up, even we tell ourselves, right? I didn't have good Amrit Vela this morning because, I really went to bed late last night. That's not the reason you have a bad Amrit Vela. You have a bad Amrit Vela, if we want to be real, because you didn't have a particularly good stage the day before. It wasn't that you ate at 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. That wasn't the reason. It's to do with the stage. We can use the excuses, but in fact excuses are lies that we tell to ourselves, basically. So Baba asked these questions this morning about, these are the indicators of a good stage. And do I have divine virtues? Have I inculcated divine virtues? Have I divinized the good that's in me? That's what divine virtues means. There is good in everyone, but it's pretty worthless in the world that we live in. I mean, the world is full of loving types, but the love doesn't go very far, and it doesn't reach very far. It doesn't do anything, doesn't change anything, it just makes things worse. Of course, it's all mixed up with attachment and lust and ego. Actually, ego investment mainly. But there is something to work on, so let's divinize it, let's bring it up. There is power, but it's sort of, it's like just makes some movement and then stops again. Makes a few more movement and stops again. We need to make our stage more constant. And this thing of checking our reality to see if things are, see if the way that I'm looking at things is closer to Baba. Some people asked about being close to the seniors. I've got a few questions that were given to me from Charlie's class this morning, so maybe we can have a look at them. One of them was, how can we inculcate virtues if they're already our true inner nature? Well, I think I've answered that one. But what are the signs of closeness to the Father and the seniors? That was another question from this morning. Closeness to the seniors, I think, has to be first of all created at a subtle level. It's closeness really to Baba, and therefore to Baba's instruments, and that's the main thing. It doesn't mean running after and trying to get a bit of the energy, and just following around like a flock of little chickens. That's not closeness, at least in the way I can understand it. Closeness with Daddy, for example, is when she can say to you clearly what she thinks and not beat around the bush. If she's sort of being careful and sensitive with you, it's because there's not closeness, that she doesn't feel that there's the right to say what she can say without, choosing her words. Some of us have that privilege to hear Daddy and what she feels, and if she wants to make a correction, then she can say it without being diplomatic, let's say. So closeness doesn't mean to be physically close even. It means to be open and close on a subtle level. So at least that's the way I have seen it. So one of the other questions was, what is the meaning of subtle service? Whether by subtle service Maya can be conquered. Can you conquer unreality? Is it something that you conquer? I mean, Baba uses these words to sort of make it lively and interesting, as if Maya is a sort of a personage with characteristics, the cat or the alligator or the mouse that sort of eats away, the rat, right, that eats away at the stage. But in fact, it's like if I jump to the perception of how Baba would be seeing things, this perfect drama that repeats every 5,000 years, and the two cycles that are happening, the one that's a horizontal one, and then the coming of the souls and the going back again, and these long periods in which we've been interacting with each other through different bodies, and here we are suddenly together in this form for this reason. If I go to that perception, I've already conquered Maya, because I'm with what is, and I'm not with what is not anymore. Maya is what is not reality. So obviously it's a subtle work that has to be done. And I think we do have romantic notions that, if I get into a really powerful stage, I can send vibrations to such and such a place, and all of that problem that they're having with each other will magically sort of dissolve and nothing, I think Charlie was talking about the super deluxe stage today, right? When we can really sort of help is when we're together with Baba. And if I'm just thinking about that situation, actually I'm not helping it at all. Worry doesn't help. I remember a story in the beginning of London service. The sisters had every week they would go, and this was I'm talking about 1975, mid-1975. The sisters would go every week and give lectures at the Spiritual Association of Great Britain, SAGB. And a spiritualist, I don't know if you know what that is, they're people that sort of believe in contacting dead relatives through mediums. That's pretty simplistic, but it's more or less that. They have meetings and they invoke the departed spirit and they talk to them. Or they cure people with the spirits of dead doctors, that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? So that's where external service started in London, in that organisation. I remember talking to someone there. It really left a deep impact on me. That there was a case of a young girl of 21 years old who was dying from cancer, and the doctors had, given up, basically. So the parents, worried, of course, they got in touch with the radios and did a campaign on TV that please make prayer circles to help this young girl not die. And so it became famous, actually. So lots of people were praying and praying for this poor girl who was dying. And this guy who was speaking to me, he said that he was a friend of the parents, and he went to the hospital and he saw the subtle aspects of that. And the poor, on a subtle level, that poor soul was saying, please, the body's rotten. Let me out of here. Help me get free from here. Please, I'm suffering so much. So you can look at things subtly and you can look at things in a gross way, and you'll see two different things. Well, whether that's true or not, I don't know. Could be. But the thoughts of so many people, probably millions of people, coming coming on top of that particular soul. would not have been very, very helpful for her in her journey. So in the same way, if we are able to reach out with our thoughts, go beyond all of this stuff actually, just by going towards Baba we can help situations anywhere really. It's not our sakash that we're giving, it's Baba's sakash is going to wherever it has to go through the through our own remembrance. Another question that was there this morning, just cleaning up these questions. When the dark side takes over and you find it difficult to be free, intellectual understanding is not enough. What can we do? And it's, I think I mentioned that before. It's working out our feelings, working out our vision of things, and jumping, appealing to the real side of ourselves. And automatically, and Baba says it very clearly, we don't have to battle against the darkness, we just have to turn on the light. Turning on the light in this case is jumping into our reality and seeing things in a different way. I think by the looks of things, Daddy's coming, is it? Yeah? So, just one more question perhaps. I'm looking at the clocks, they're all showing different times, so I'm a bit confused. Each clock is showing a different time. One of the questions is how to sustain determination in a creative way. I see determination as a sort of the fuel for our tank in a sense. And it's obvious that it's very difficult to feel determined if we're not experiencing what Baba calls immediate fruits. If everything is only going to be there after 2 years or 5 years, then determination is very difficult to maintain. I saw a survey recently done in England by the Institute of Social Psychology, in which they were investigating people who wanted to change habits. How many days do you have to repeat something in order for a new habit to take over? And on average, it was 66 days. 66 days to break a habit, to create a new one. So if you start some new process and you give up after 2 weeks, probably it won't become natural. Yeah? Maybe with Baba's help you don't need 66 days either. But some new process, something new, determination is related to some inspiration to do effort. And so where does that inspiration come from? The Mulis. You can listen to the Mulis in a creative way. We can get points to feed that determination. Then we start to look at the reality around us and where does that effort fit and what sorts of application, what are the sort of quick wins that I can get through it. And then it's just really persistence. It has to be more persistent than just a couple of weeks, So I think we can have a few minutes of silence until Daddy comes. Yeah? Daddy's coming at half an hour. She's coming at half an hour. We don't know if she's coming. Yeah. Okay. Okay, she's coming at 7:30. Fine. So let's have half an hour of meditation. Is that okay? Okay, thanks. Om Shanti.